Greetings, people of the Unwebs, Jake here. So, there's been some recent test screenings for the Fantastic Four, which comes out, I believe, in 6 weeks, give or take. And, according to rumors, the test screenings were not great. And so I posted a video about 2 months ago, kind of talking about how, just Doomsday, I think, is a little too big to succeed. And I think I also brought up in that video, maybe even a previous one, about how I think this year, 2025, was kind of going to be the year that makes or break Marvel, just because they had 3 movies coming out, which I think this is the first time that 3 movies have come out the same year. I think since maybe pre-COVID, could be wrong because the MCU, for the most part, after COVID, has just been very forgettable for the most part, and so I'll kind of circle back to the Fantastic Four when I'm bringing this up, but so again, I think it was that Avengers video or maybe a previous one, but basically I had predicted that I didn't see things going too well for Marvel. Actually, no, I think it was an older one, because I believe it was before Captain America: Brave New World came out, which that movie ended up flopping, and then Thunderbolts I kind of predicted would be would do okay, and even though it did fairly well review wise, it apparently underperformed. Now I don't know by how much. I don't think it was an outright flop, but it definitely didn't do as well financially as what Marvel had hoped. So now, their next upcoming movie is Fantastic Four. And even in between the movies, there are the shows. Which Daredevil was one of that show I had predicted would be the kind of guaranteed hit. And apparently it was pretty well received critically, but viewership was lower than Acolyte, which I think is really, really sad. Granted, I haven't watched Daredevil Born Again yet. But even still, for a series that was beloved on Netflix, and it seemed like, for the most part, Disney Plus doing Daredevil Born Again captured a lot of that same, essence as the Netflix series. And again, for the most part, people said it was pretty good. And a nice follow-up to the Netflix series. But it's sad, though, that even a show that was well-received just tanked in the viewership. Which I think part of that is the Disney problem in general, and I really need to learn to turn my phone off when I'm recording. But I think that's part of the problem with the Disney brand as a whole, from all the franchises, like Disney proper, Star Wars, Marvel, is that I think they've damaged them really, almost to the point to where, Marvel was kind of this bulletproof franchise where even the kind of lower tier movies still did pretty good financially and got good enough reviews to where people still went to go see them. Whereas now they've had flops either on Disney Plus as in terms of viewership ratings, or outright flops financially in the box office with the Marvels and Captain America, and now with Thunderbolts underperforming. And so, circling back to Fantastic Four, I kind of don't... I think in the video that I did, I'd kind of predict, I could see Fantastic Four going either way, just because a lot of fans have been waiting for the MCU to do their version of Fantastic Four, and hopefully do, a more accurate take. Which, from the trailers, aesthetically, I do really like that they're going for that kind of, retro futuristic style, like in the comics. It's just, I think in a way it's kind of a shame that they're trying something new, more so aesthetically, at this point when they, that's kind of the beauty of Marvel, those first 3 phases, is they are always trying to incorporate, different genres within the superhero genre. Like Captain America Winter Soldier, which is still my favorite and I think the best MCU movie, was a spy espionage thriller that just so happened to also be a superhero movie. Or Ant-Man was a heist movie that also happened to be a superhero movie, and so on and so forth. So, but, for the most part, a lot of the movies post-Endgame, even a lot of the shows have been either, okay, a few hits, like Spider-Man No Way Home, or they've just been outright bad. And a lot of this hinges on Fantastic Four being like what should be a great movie, because Marvel have had a little bit of time to like kind of course correct after a few years of like a lot of backlash for some of the decisions they made in the movies, and I believe, I don't know if it was substantiated or not, but I know there were rumors that like they're doing some last minute reshoots like last week or maybe the week before that. I don't know the details of those reshoots if that was substantiated, like if they were just very minor to maybe like beef up some of the CGI, because the female Silver Surfer in the trailer looks pretty terrible. So maybe those are the reshoots where they're just trying to like again beef up maybe some of the special effects, or I think one of the rumors, again I don't know how much of these have been substantiated or if this is just purely rumor. But I think one of the rumors that I heard, though, with the ending is they wanted to reshoot it to make Galactus more, like, a more pivotal role. Because a lot of people comparing, like, from the test screenings, people are comparing it to, like, the Red Hulk in Captain America 4, where he just was there for a few minutes before he got defeated. And if that's true, those are probably warranted reshoots, because Galactus is this, not only Earth-ending threat, but, like, potentially universe-ending threat. And I also feel like, granted, obviously, I haven't seen the movie. But I just feel like a villain like Galactus you should build up to, instead of having him be the main villain in Fantastic Four 1, and then he gets defeated. But, we'll see. Maybe Fantastic Four will be a solid movie, and maybe it'll make sense why they were able to defeat Galactus so easily. Don't know. I have my doubts. I really don't foresee Fantastic Four, or at least I don't foresee myself enjoying it if I get around to seeing it, because I've just not enjoyed a lot of Marvel lately. But I could also see this movie kind of underperforming just based on the trajectory of like a lot of the other recent Marvel movies and TV shows, where there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of like fan interest compared to previous Marvel movies, where it was like the thing to go see that movie opening weekend. Otherwise, you'd ruin. You would risk the chance of getting things ruined ruined for you by spoilers. And so, I just don't think there's enough fan interest here lately in the last few years to where people feel like they have to go see the new Marvel movies. It's like, if it gets good enough reviews, I might go check it out like the week afterwards, or 2 weeks after the movie opens in theaters. And so I do think that if Fantastic Four either flops or underperforms, which I'd say more than likely it'll underperform. I don't see it outright flopping. Could easily be wrong, though. But I could definitely see it underperforming. And if it underperforms, like even if maybe eventually it makes its budget back, like say after 4 weeks being in theaters, that's still a really bad sign, because Fantastic Four is supposed to directly lead into Avengers Doomsday. And so if the movie leading up to that underperforms, I think Marvel are really going to be hitting the panic button. Because I'm pretty sure they're already, panicking. Because, again, just how poorly their shows and movies have been doing lately. And with, Ironheart and Wonder Man also coming out later this year, I don't foresee those, doing anything for Marvel, even if they're good, which Ironheart does not look good at all. And that movie, I think, was completed 2-3 years ago, and they're just now releasing it, so doesn't give me a lot of confidence. Wonder Man, don't know. I know very, very little about that character, and only saw, I think, the one trailer or teaser. I forget what it was. I can't even remember. So I don't see that going over particularly well either. So yeah, I really do think Marvel are at the point where if Fantastic Four is not a success, more so financially, I think Marvel can maybe get away with another movie that's kind of okay, in terms of reviews. But if they don't have another hit before Doomsday, they really have a problem on their hands. And I believe I also mentioned this in the whatever the last video was that I talked about Marvel, is if, again, say, because I think that was what I brought up, is that if all 3 movies that came out this year, so Captain America 4, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four all either flop or underperform. And even if Avengers, Doomsday and Secret Wars do well, I don't think they'll ever do as well as like Infinity War and Endgame. That was lightning in a bottle. We'll never see that again with any. I don't think with any franchise, Marvel or otherwise. But I really don't see why you would continue the MCU in its current state. Like I would just. And also at this point, they're too deep anyways to where they could just outright cancel Doomsday and Infinity or Secret Wars. So they're probably going to go ahead and do those anyways. But I think once those movies conclude, I would just put the MCU on ice, give it a good decade before you reboot it. Because again, at this point, there's just not a whole lot of fan interest. Just box office returns have been gradually getting lower and lower. Deadpool and Wolverine was kind of an anomaly because it wasn't. That was more of a love letter to kind of the Fox era movies, and also Deadpool being one of the most popular comic book characters right now. It has been for several years. So a lot of that movie's success isn't directly tied to the MCU. And so that was one of their few wins. But that, again, is. Yeah, I guess even though it technically is an MCU movie now, I kind of don't count it because it's still a continuation of that Fox era and kind of nicely tied a lot of that up. So yeah, those are my very rambly thoughts as always on why I think Fantastic Four is kind of the make or break for Marvel at this point. If this movie flops or underperforms, just. Why bother continuing after Secret Wars? Just after that movie, just announce hey, this is the conclusion we've been building up these last probably 20 years at that point, or close to 20 years. It's we're gonna just call it quits. We went off on maybe a high note or a okayish note, probably as good as Marvel are gonna get at this point, and so yeah. That would be my call if I were in charge. Is just all right, after Secret Wars, everything's done. We're done. We'll pick this back up in maybe 10, 15 years. But just stop. Just stop. But anywho, those are my thoughts. Give me your opinions below. What do you think? Do you think Fantastic Four will do okay? Do you think it's going to flop? And what are your predictions for Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars? Leave your thoughts below, and until next time, everyone, cheers.